It's disappointing that I need to make this video for two reasons. One being because it's 9 o'clock at night and I don't feel like putting on makeup, so I'm gonna do this entire video with no eyebrows, so tough luck. As I mentioned in my first video, it's not a secret that racism is a hot topic. So hot that many people depend on keeping racism alive to earn a living or to achieve power. Of course, they're not gonna tell you this for obvious reasons, but I assure you that these folks do not give a damn about you. Hi, my name is Gothix, and today we're discussing Stop Asian Hate because, well, the media tells us we should be focused on this, just like they do when they tell us to focus on any other story when they frame their coverage to support a narrative that they want to push, just as they did with George Floyd or generally any incident that involves a black victim and a white suspect. Going back to my original question, I asked you which of these names seemed familiar. If you were outraged about George Floyd, then you should be equally outraged to learn about Tony Timpa, a 32-year-old man who died by the hands of police officers. Did I mention that the officers were also kneeling on him? But if you look at the coverage surrounding Tony Timpa, it's clear that the story wasn't treated in the same way as the coverage surrounding George Floyd. Race isn't mentioned anywhere in the story, and of course, Tony's death didn't spark international outrage. In case you haven't figured it out yet, race hustlers are not specific to black issues. There was recently a mass shooting in Georgia, and we can see how quickly the media labeled this incident as a hate crime fueled by white supremacy. But if you learned anything in my original video, then you should know that the media's job is to report the news, and they're not in charge of homicide investigations. So why would the media outlets try to link this case to racism, even though it was determined that the motive behind the incident was due to a sexual addiction? And regardless of how disgusting that is to hear, a sexual addiction is very different from targeting someone specifically because of their race. Not too long after that incident, we had a situation in Colorado where, once again, many people were quick to conclude that this was yet another display of white supremacy. Now, I get a lot of harsh criticisms from people that think my videos are hateful towards black people, or I'm just telling white people the things that they want to hear, despite me sharing factual information which can easily be accessed online by a toddler. The taste of free publicity, especially when it comes from my critics, but I digress. My point being, never in my life did I think my mom hated me for telling me I dressed like a slob or I was slacking in school. How do you fix something if you don't know it's broken? Would you rather be lied to? If so, you're watching the wrong channel. The truth is, 27% of violent offenders against Asian victims are black, compared to 24% for white offenders. And regardless if you want to believe those stats because you're desperate to blame everything on white supremacy, you're not entitled to your own reality. And before you accuse me of creating more division by pointing out facts that are easily accessible to the public, let me be clear that lying and deliberately spreading propaganda actually creates more division. And I know what you're gonna say. Trump ignited all this division in the country because he used things like China virus or Wuhan virus when referencing COVID-19. And you already know my stance on political correctness, but by that logic, if he created more division by using those not politically correct terms, then I would think the media is equally as guilty, are they not?
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
We have new information about how the Wuhan coronavirus is spread.
Tying coronavirus to China and Chinese people isn't just a racist dog whistle. It's a whole racist orchestra. It's a mighty, mighty racist bass tone.
I hear Stephen Miller in this foreign virus, setting up travel bans for the outside invasion of the disease. That's not the way
Chinese coronavirus that they've been
that's
calling
not
the first U.S. case of Chinese coronavirus.
The Chinese coronavirus.
This is coming as the Chinese coronavirus.
China's coronavirus outbreak. China's.
And if we compare the news coverage surrounding violence against Asians as we did in my previous video for violence against blacks, once again, we can see a trend. 84-year-old killed after a horrific daytime attack caught on video in San Francisco. Interesting. No mention of the suspect's race. All right, let's move on. 3 arrested in beating and robbery of Asian man in San Francisco laundromat. No mention of the suspect's race. Suspect arrested for brutally attacking 2 Asian men in San Francisco. Oh, and big surprise, no mention of suspect's race. But what's interesting about this is the second the media catches wind of a white offender or someone that can at least pass as white for committing a crime against a person of color, rest assured, you'll know what the suspect looks like. And if we consider all the anti-white rhetoric that's been brewing through entertainment, education, and diversity training, it's very clear what agenda is being pushed. Because if the media overlords truly cared about fighting racism, then they wouldn't cherry pick which cases they report as hate crimes depending on what color the suspects are. Or is this where the black people can't be racist excuse comes in? Also, where's the public outrage for affirmative action policies that systemically discriminate against Asians? Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, it's actually harder for Asians to get into elite schools such as Yale. On average, Asians tend to do very well academically, so in the name of diversity, school admissions boards have made it harder for Asians to get accepted in order to make room for other people, even if they're not doing as well academically. It's also worth noting that affirmative action policies lead to low grades and high dropout rates for black students. Don't believe me? Look it up. Although I don't think you need a fact checker to tell you that accepting a student who has less than favorable grades into an elite school puts them at a disadvantage, which is why I'm always critical about the policy. You really want to help someone? Encourage them to study more or get a tutor instead of making the goal easier to achieve. Guys, I'm being serious right now. If you're a critic of my videos and you find my content to be white supremacist talking points, seek help immediately. Take your feelings off the table and actively listen to what I'm saying. You are being manipulated. Make no mistake. This divide that we're seeing in America is deliberate, and it's fueled in part by the media. And if you still think I'm full of shit, try this out for an experiment. The next time a story is reported, pay attention to how the coverage is framed. What circumstances do they mention race? Are they labeling something a hate crime long before a formal investigation has been completed? Is there evidence that contradicts the narrative that's being pushed, like the data I showed you at the beginning of this video? And most importantly, pay attention to which media outlets constantly race bait their articles. Do they lean more on the right or the left? Or both? I already know the answers to all of these questions, but I'm not going to tell you. You know why? Because as I said earlier, I don't believe in making things easier for people. You can research, you got fingers, you got a brain. Now go ahead and use it.